Mr. Gilmore?
All right, take it away.
You need to read the script or?
I'm just texting. I'm texting Crystal. She's covered.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want me to kick it off?
Yes, but
It is 6:03 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th. Thank you for joining. I'd like to call to order the South County EMS Board of Oversight meeting. The meeting is being recorded. Please make sure you are muted unless you're the active speaker. All public attendees are invited to participate at the designated time following the completion of the scheduled agenda items. We ask that you keep your comments under 5 minutes. You're welcome to have open discussion in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, but please be aware the chat can become public record. Remote participants must identify themselves or you will be removed from the meeting. This is being done for the purpose of internet security. If you wish to speak, please state your name and town of residence prior to speaking for the public record.
good job there.
Thanks, sir. I guess we'll go right to the agenda.
I have minutes from the last meeting, attached in the packet. Wanted to peruse those real quickly.
I'll second. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Mark it unanimous. Okay, cool.
I said I.
Okay.
I saw you're behind me, so I could.
I think just for the sake of good timekeeping, we were discussing moving items 3 and 4 to the top, unless there are any objections.
Thank you.
So in your meeting packets, there are 2 draft agreements. The first is a mutual aid agreement with the town of Hatfield. I sent this out, you email to look over. And this is fairly, this is, a document I put together based off of our mutual aid agreement language mixed with a few others. And it addresses specifically the $350. It would have an effective date of July 1, following the discussion that everybody has had. It allows for that 2-way service charge. The second document is the existing paramedic intercept agreement that we have with Hatfield. But it changes the fee from $300 to $350. And the idea here is we don't stack the fees, right? So we go to Hatfield for an intercept, that's $350. We go to Hatfield for a call, that's $350, right? Instead of $7. So I'm open to any suggested changes. If you could let me know within the next however long, happy to address it. Otherwise, if you're happy with these agreements, this is what I would like to put forth to Chief Flaherty.
So will this cover no transit or transport also?
Yes.
Is, given that this is an expenditure by Hatfield, will this be subject to their town meeting and the budget that governs this?
As I understand it, the message I had received from Chief Flaherty, was the town decided to move forward with this. So if that's the case, I'll certainly, attend their town meeting to answer any questions. That's as I understand.
In item number one, the second paragraph, it says upon receipt of a request for mutual aid ALS services.
Yes,
What happens during if it's just a BLS call?
we don't run just BLS.
Okay.
There's never a BLS event. It's always a permit.
Is there any reason that we want somebody's legal counsel to look at this, or is this, I don't know, typically what's done? I'm more interested in the new agreement. I don't know if it's based off an old agreement or the totally. So I don't know, just looking for opinions.
Probably should run by legal counsel just to make sure all the wording is correct.
Who's got the most, the lowest billable hour?
I mean, so SCEMS has a line items for legal.
Yeah.
With the town of Deerfield, so, that's probably the best pathway to take. I'm happy to do so. We certainly have, some time with this. It's definitely new. Yeah, sure thing. So I think with that, then we can just kind of defer any discussion on this until, that, so I will pass it along to council through Christopher, and we'll follow up with next meeting.
I will say that I read through both of them, and overall I thought it was, they look good, they look professional, as I would expect.
The new agreement was that based off of old mutual aid agreements?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fairly standard language, we've used this before. So we have this agreement in place with, a few times. All right. Moving on then, is there any comment on that? Any public comment? Okay. Moving on, item number 4 for the budget. There was the indirect cost calculation update from the town of Deerfield.
Sure, so just following up on some conversations that obviously this body, as well as the various finance committees and select boards of all the towns had in the last couple of weeks. So I think I'll try to make it quick, I'll boil it down. I believe the concerns, Fred, that you had expressed were, one, why is there such a high jump in indirect costs this year? And it is a high jump. It went from it's a 30% increase over what we saw in FY 26. So that's question number one. And then question number two is, if the explanation is capital, because of course we purchased a $400,000 ambulance this year, why didn't that show up in past years? Because this is certainly the year with the biggest increases that we've seen. So I think those are the two basic questions. If you bring, actually, Josh, we might have to share some of your big co-host. And I'm just gonna pull up a copy of the spreadsheet that Holly, our town accountant, uses to actually calculate indirect costs. Just for a little background, so I believe when the IMA was first put together, there was a flat 10% that the town of Deerfield was charging for basically all of our administrative budget. I think in 2019, Brenda possibly unilaterally took a look at it and said, whoa, this is gonna get really high and not really make sense. So she went ahead and instead adopted, basically the way we were calculating our wastewater enterprise funds, indirect costs. And she said, okay, I'm just gonna plug scams into that set of calculations. Okay, I can share now. Sorry. I think it is. Probably look really tiny at first, yeah. It's slightly better. And sorry, I know it's still pretty small in there for some folks. So we went back through the last few years, and the only other change I would note is that back in FY 25, Brenda added in grants as well, and that's grants that SCEMS has, but also grants that the town has. And because the overall indirect costs are based on SCEMS as a percentage of Deerfield's budget, in theory, there shouldn't be, a major swing based on adding grants to it. So you can see actually in FY 25, when we added grants, it went from, I think the SCEMS percentage of the budget was 5.9 to 5.1. So not a huge change there. And just really quick to just kind of dive in. Again, I don't want to belabor it because it's a very in the weeds calculation here. But this is what, and you, again, probably can't see this too well, so I'll do my best to explain it. This is the indirect cost calculations that Holly does. What you need to know is basically we look at the overall town of Deerfield budget, and that's page 2 of the recap. So roughly these days, 30 million.
Oh, but operating and capital.
Operating and capital, yep. So that's roughly $30 million. And then we add in any known grants that are being administered during that year. That's always for the prior fiscal year. Obviously, this is your recap. And then you look at the coming year projected administrative costs. And so this kind of second section here is all our different select board office, town accountant's office, health insurance, legal expenses, all that stuff. In the past, again, there was a flat 10% of that was charged to the other towns, and we're not doing that anymore. So instead, we're charging what the SCEMS budget is as a percentage of Deerfield's budget. So we look at the recap total budget, and we take what SCEMS budget plus any capital, and we take that percentage and apply that across the board. So most years, that's really resulted in a fairly consistent number. I can go back here for a second.
Yeah, it hasn't changed much. So.
Yeah, so over on this right-hand side here, you can see the percentage change. Some years it's gone down, some years it's jumped a bit, but it hasn't certainly been anything like 30% previously. I think that 30%, what we've identified as the reason there's such a jump is, yes, capital, so the $400,000 ambulance, but the other piece of it is just that Deerfield's budget overall got smaller. And the reason that is because in FY 25, we had $4 million outlay from CPA for the 1888 building, which is going to be our new town offices. That doesn't show up in FY 26 on the recap. So that's $4 million that's taken out of that budget. And so counterintuitively, our overall budget went down between those 2 years. And that means that SCEMS budget actually made up a larger percentage of the overall budget. So that's a piece of it. It's just the capital and then just the percentage change. Because again, our budget went down, SCEMS budget went up. So then the question is, well, why didn't we see this jump in other years? Which is a very reasonable question. And the year to look at, I think, was, I'll skip to another spreadsheet here. I think back in 25, let me just double check. Yeah, this is Holly's summary sheet. Yeah, so back in FY 25 here, you can see there's a column for capital. And there was at least $250,000 in capital for scams. It's in fact closer to 375,000. And so that year, the town of Deerfield took money out of the town's capital stabilization and put it towards scams capital items. That should have been captured in indirect costs and it wasn't. So there's essentially, hundreds of thousands of dollars missing from that year. This year, we caught it. So that year, you probably would have seen a bigger increase. It's true that this year again is a major increase. And what I would say is, I think, and Holly has said this as well, there's a million different ways to calculate indirect costs. Every town does it differently. And I think I can say on behalf of the select board, we're certainly open to, discussing a different way to do that. And it might make sense, if we crack open the IMA overall to include.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
this should be codified someplace.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be, oh, right, it was 10, now we think it should go down to 7.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and that's the other point I wanted to make, is just, I think there's certainly been a failing in terms of transparency and just, making it clear how this is done every year, it's clearly it hasn't been a problem in the past, but if there's concern, we want it to be upfront and make sense for all the member towns.
And the other question I have, I would like it, this gets negotiated and put into the agreement. I think that operating and capital should be treated separately, because the overhead cost for the town of Deerfield to administer a large capital cost is really pretty minimal. I mean, there's some, it's not 7.5%, it's not, in the case of a $400,000 ambulance, it's not $30,000 to administer that, the purchase of that ambulance. And I think it is, if you want to say it's 2% of the take capital out and call it 2% or 1% or some small percentage. I mean, in essence, we paid $430,000 for that ambulance, not $400,000 for that ambulance. And I just don't think that having the capital, either the town's capital or the STEM's capital budget included in that is proper accounting.
Gotcha. Well, again,
But I think all this should be in a formal agreement, not,
yeah,
and that is part of the problem I had at the meeting the other day, is that Holly didn't really know why it sort of fumbling around for the answer that you just gave here. But that's not what she said.
well, I will say in Holly's defense, I've seen how a lot of conversations around indirect costs go, easily slide into nickel and diming and kind of people taking up more time than it's worth. So you do want to have whatever it is, you want to make sure it's easy and can be done without any additional thought.
And I think it should be easily referred to an agreement and say,
Yes.
this is what it says, this is what the number is.
Yeah.
And it might even be worth talking to the accountants for Wakely and Sunderland and that say, how do you do indirect costs? How do you do indirect costs? And come up with a hybrid, if it makes sense, for scams. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
for shared.
I don't know if you have any enterprise funds or,
We have, one enterprise fund.
I mean,
Our water.
pure water, it's okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes absolute sense, and, when we'll have the opportunity to actually kind of get into that IMA, that's another question, but yeah, definitely open to having that discussion.
Okay.
So anyway, any other questions on this stuff? This is kind of the,
I think if
High
you
level
go back,
explanation.
the year that you went from 10% to 7% or whatever the number
yes,
is.
yeah,
If you go back to the minutes, we'll find out that there was a reason that happened. And
Sure.
we had a very similar, and Gary probably remember, we had a very similar conversation about that. So there's, in the minutes, there is a reason what that percentage was. And whatever year that was, go back to those minutes, you'll be able to maybe find some clarification.
you mean why the 10% was set, or why?
And the 10% was set in the initial, because there was a lot of things happened in the initial. Then as time went on, the workload and this was on Deerfield's, had said this, that their workload had decreased because now it was up and running. So that's why the numbers went down.
And that sort of fits in with my idea on the capital is that the amount of indirect costs should somehow be vaguely related to the amount of actual work that's put in.
Yeah.
And the 10% number came because when we initially started this, our budget was about 10% of what Deerfield's budget was at the time, which is where the number came out of. And I appreciate the fact that it's been adjusted downward. I do agree, we need to codify it and come up with some solution. We had at one point asked for that IMA to be reopened and looked at. And I thought something was given that may not have made it all the way down. It may have been before you.
Very possibly.
But direction for the three town administrators to get together and kind of make the first pass at it about what you thought needed to be changed. I know now is not the time, but after town meetings conclude, if we can somehow put that on an agenda item to have that looked at, I don't know, June, July, starting over the summer, to begin the process of going through that. And certainly a great idea to have the three accountants meet, go through their portion of it and adjust and see what makes sense, because when we built this initially, the three town administrators were involved. When we got to the finance side, they became heavily involved in this, because I remember a few nights of some pretty strong debate on coming up with cost structures and initial budgets and trying to defend initial budgets, so.
And it's not surprising that this has slipped, we've had turnover in town administrators in all three towns. So there's no institutional memory wanting to do that.
I don't know, well, it's not new business, so I should hold that question.
Any other questions on the indirect cost calculation?
Moving on. The chief of South County EMS position will become vacant. June 22nd of 2026. I appreciate everybody's time. And so we wanted to have some discussion about the job vacancy and posting and what the process is going to look like moving forward. So I'm going to kind of step back from this conversation. But I know that Christopher has had some thoughts, as has Mr. Hilchi, so.
Sure, if I could just say, I sent around copies of the job description as they were back in 2023 of the Deerfield Select Board. The vacancy notice that went out at about the same time. I believe I included some interview questions as well that had been discussed, possibly by the preliminary screening committee that was group that was put together at that time. And you know, I guess I just also sent around the IMA because that outlines a couple elements of this. But you know, the basic process is, you know, at the end of the day, Deerfield is the appointing authority, but the BOO has a responsibility to provide a recommendation to the BOO. And so I believe the way we ended up doing this is after we had a preliminary screening group made up of Deerfield employees, I think, last time around.
I think it was the screen committee was one member, was a three-person.
It was, okay.
One for each town.
Great. Then finalists moved on to a joint meeting of the BOO and the select board. So that there could be final interviews. BOO made their recommendation based on who was there and their performance in the interview, and the select board ended up, you know, deliberating and making their decision. So this time around, I mean, similar process. I'm hoping we could put together a preliminary screening committee. Again, members of each town, I think probably a select board member for each town who's on the BOO would make sense. Myself and Josh would be there, but not ex officio. We're not participating.
I don't think the chief should be in the interview.
Okay, then, well,
He's stepping away. I think, you know, he shouldn't be, he'd be at the final. Anybody can be at the final, but I don't see him in the screen.
okay. Well, this is all just my.
For two
my
reasons.
suggestion.
One
Yeah.
is that the person that comes, the people that interview. There's a understanding that that initial interview is not a public record,
Right.
right? So, and if there's people that may not, if he knows that the chief is gonna be sitting there, they may not wish to put their name in the hat, so. I've had people back out of final interview because it was go public. And there was still a chance that it would get it done.
Yeah, no, I guess I would just say the value to me of having Josh there again in a non-voting capacity is just his expertise in.
We have that extra, I think we have that extra. And I'll back down away from that, but I think that we've gone through this before. Gary Stone ran a department, Matt ran a department, Blake Gilmore is very familiar with the department. I don't think, I'd rather keep it separate
Okay, that's fine.
personally.
That was, yeah, I thought.
And I think last time the members of the screening committee were all not select board members. And,
Okay,
I no, I can speak for Whately, was our fire chief who's volunteered to do it again.
Yep.
In this case. Yep. But it would be people with relevant experience, but not. necessarily.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I guess on the screening committee, what I'd love to hear is, you know, who does Whately want to put forward, who does Sunderland want to put forward? Assuming it's gonna be a 3-member screening.
Yeah, I've already talked to JP Kennedy, our police chief and fire chief, and he's willing to do it again.
Gotcha.
If you guys have any discussion in Sunderland at all?
I have not, no. Chris will hopefully be with us in a second.
Okay.
Great, so maybe we can come back to that one. My train of thought. Oh, yeah, job description and vacancy notice. So yeah, again, I sent those around from the last time. I know one thing we'll want to add to that vacancy notice is just something clearly stating that if you want to have this to be a confidential process until final interviews, please say so. That's really the trigger for allowing that preliminary screening committee to go into executive session when they interview those initial candidates. So we'll make that update. And I'm just curious to hear if anyone had other updates on the job description or the vacancy notice this time around.
I agree with the job description. I don't know if the job description has been followed, but I agree with the job description.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in the interest of alacrity, so that we'll approach a possible successor within the time frame, and or maybe into a little interim period, that I thought the job description was good and that I would feel comfortable us using it again. Otherwise, we could send it back to the personnel committees of all 3 towns and wait for them to work through it and spit it back out. It'll be essentially the same, and unless there's something that's happened in the last 3 years.
Relatively recent that it was updated anyway for 3 years ago.
It's true, yeah.
So I don't know if we've got the need to take those, the time consuming process of revisiting it
Sure.
across 3
Yeah.
towns.
Yeah, the only, reading it, the sort of unusual thing about it is, so generally our job descriptions have that essential functions.
Says the meeting.
Kind of boilerplate at the top that basically says, yeah, these are the essential functions, but by the way, there may be some other things that you have to do, and it's kind of a catch-all for that. That one includes, of course, the working chief requirement of 16 hours on the ambulance. So it is a little bit of an outlier in that sense. But otherwise, I'm not hearing any desire for changes to that vacancy notice or that job description.
And I apologize, I can't put my eyes onto it.
I'm gonna try to pull it up.
That's fine. just to make sure the residency requirement is listed in there. I wanna make sure we're front and center on that this time.
I'm gonna check and see if that's in our, in the. Vacancy notice, I don't see it in there. Just double check the job description. I wouldn't think it would be in the job description, it is in the contract, obviously, but. Yeah, I don't think it's in either document, so. Might make sense to put it in the vacancy notice and just say, you know, an expectation of this position is to reside within such and such geographical area. Make that change.
I think the current contract was 15 miles of the building, and I don't know if we wanna keep it to the building or within the service area. Crystal still struggling with it.
The link didn't work, so we were trying to get her done.
We invite her from here. Trying to get Crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
So
say
she's, what was she there? There we go. There it is. Glad we got a big snapshot of it.
Crystal, you there? Yeah, I know. I think it should have sent it. So
Is there, she's muted.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, hey, there you are.
So Crystal, you want to ask Crystal a question about the makeup?
oh, yeah. So Crystal, we're just trying to establish who's gonna be on the preliminary screening committee for the chief position. And so we determined that, Whately is gonna have, I believe, their fire chief. Fire chief, Deerfield, I think we'll talk amongst ourselves, I suppose. And so we just wanted to hear if Sunderland had any thoughts on who from Sunderland would serve on that preliminary screening committee.
I guess this is only because it's the very first time I'm having to think about it. So
I know I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize.
exactly. So I will have to get back to you and I'll check with the chief, see what he thinks. So you're having your fire chief do it.
Yeah, he did it last time as well.
All right, so I'll check with our fire chief, see if that's something he's interested in doing. I will likely check with Mr. Fighting-Kevich and see if that is something he's interested in doing. But give me a day or two, I'll.
Christopher, do you have anything that shows who the composition of the committee was last time?
I don't, I could try to track that down, but I didn't see anything.
John Fitzgerald was
John,
involved.
I thought he was-
There's Chief John Fitzgerald, myself, the individual, because he had his uniform on.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'd like to suggest that we're gonna have non-boo members from the other two towns. We ought to have a non-boo member from Sunderland. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay,
Yeah, obviously the boo will get a chance to make a recommendation in the process, so.
I did run into, Captain over at South Deerfield Fire, he offered. If he was needed at all for screening or interview processes, he would be willing to participate, so. Yeah. That's whatever. Appreciate their offer, but. I also think we've got a fire chief represented, perhaps a police, someone in the police force. To be
I
represented.
Just think experience with emergency services.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I know the select board in Deerfield has this on their agenda for tomorrow night, but obviously if we don't have, final member from Sunderland to appoint, it's all right, we can hold off. It sounds like we're good to get the job description and the vacancy posting out there with that change on the residency requirement. Any other thoughts on vacancy or job description, or are we good to go on those?
So look for a time frame, Chris.
You need to have that job description out there,
Yeah.
probably a month. So,
Okay, so there's no hurry in naming the committee.
no, exactly,
Between the time to posting it, and then the time to get
Yeah,
applications.
it is nice to be able to have a meeting where they can talk over questions before candidates show up, but that's the only slight urgency, that's call it urgency, I suppose.
Hey, Crystal, for your benefit, I know you joined us, we did take a quick look at the job description, if there was anything in there that you thought should be updated or corrected. If you've had a chance to look at it, if not, anything that you come up with, if you could forward that to Mr. Dunn when you get an opportunity. And Blake, the same would go for you, I know you've been here the whole time, so.
Yeah, I've already been looking at it. So,
Okay.
So what do you think about the college degree, Mr. Blake?
about the what?
There's in the job description, it asks for a college degree. 7 in,
I hate to tell you this, but I would say that would be a good idea. I don't know if you want to make it a mandatory one or if there's something that would move them forward on the list if they did put it down. But it also, if they've got a college degree, what's it in?
yeah.
So not just any college degree is going to be,
Agreed. So can we take a look at that and review that? And maybe send some suggestions to you, Chris, also?
Sure, I will say, so it says bachelor's degree is preferred, and then it has some experience requirements, and then, or any equivalent combination of education, training, certification, experience, which is usually the kind of out.
It doesn't say required, it's preferred.
Exactly.
If I,
It does have special requirements about.
Yeah.
EMT training, et cetera, but yeah.
yeah, if I remember correctly, paramedic certification is similar to like an associate's degree. It's about 2 years worth of work.
Probably. You really have your hand up, Blake?
I do. I got an associate's with my paramedic when I took it, which was way back when. So I know everything's changed since then. I was just going to ask the question if they still are giving an associate's with the paramedic. Chief?
So, yeah, so it depends on the program. You see some that are non-degree programs, some are associates, and then there are bachelor's programs.
And I think that the bachelor's program is a little bit more advanced, taking them into more biology and stuff, going towards like a physician's assistant or something like that.
Oh, not really. It's very scarce and uncommon. There's only a couple programs in the nation that have really pulled this off. They've kind of gone away in the Commonwealth. So it's not about any greater clinical training or ability. It has more to do with having, core curriculum courses and then taking some leadership and some incident command and emergency management and things like that.
Which is stuff you can pick up without having to do that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
You guys all have the vacancy notice, right?
I've got it in an email.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think when you sent us 4 or 5 attachments to the file.
Well, the screening committee will get to craft questions. I don't know if there are any questions or topics for interviews that anyone definitely wants included, but it'd be great to hear if there is something you want beyond what's already in those interview questions.
Yeah, we've got time to.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
JP Kennedy is also a paramedic, correct?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's, the captain of the Amherst Police.
Oh, okay.
Firefighter, paramedic.
He just can't get enough of emergency work.
Right.
We just hired him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the fire chief, captain in Amherst Police and
Amherst Fire, I'm sorry, Fire,
he's been doing this quite a while.
yes.
Okay.
Currently lives in Conway, is moving back to Whitman.
Right.
Just got one question, probably for Josh. Now that you've been doing this, running the department for a while, one of the first questions here is the chief is expected to work minimum 16 hours on the ambulance. Does your job allow for that?
Currently,
You've been doing it.
yeah, currently, we don't have 16 hours open. I would need to create those hours and I would need to find additional coverage, and get another person to work alongside. So I think, if you're talking about a call-based system, that makes a lot of sense because you get unit hour coverage. That's not how we function and it isn't how we function for some years. So, I think you're asking a question to me, which is what are you looking to get out of the position? Do you want a paramedic to staff an ambulance who does some administrative work? Or do you want a chief who does administrative work? So I guess that's for you to decide what you think is best. I will tell you, my experience has been, I think you need two administrative people on the department. And if you're going to have one of them do calls, you need the other person to devote themselves fully to administrative time. Because there's simply more work than one person can achieve.
That was my question.
And if they're forced to split their time, it's just a fundamental question. What are you trying to achieve out of this position, right? If you want a paramedic who can do secretarial work, then hire that, but you don't need a chief at that point.
Just to follow up on Gary's point, obviously we want a chief who's a fully qualified and licensed paramedic. So in some instance, they're able to respond to issues, and you've done that on weekends and filling in and so forth. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's essential that, it's a ALS paramedic level department, so I think the chief should, to my eyes, be a paramedic at least, right? Certainly in my case, there have been times where I have had to cover the ambulance overnights, weekends, days, things like that. And then in the course of a regular day, there's plenty of opportunity for that position to respond to calls. Maybe not staffed on an ambulance, but there's no shortage of clinical exposure. So I think part of the concern with that, and I could be off on this, but is that you don't want the chief to lose their clinical acumen. You want them to remain functional as a paramedic. There's no shortage of opportunity for that, whether they're scheduled on an ambulance or not. So I know that I worked a lot of ambulance shifts. So it happens. Um, Yeah, I mean. I don't know, I'd be interested to see what the time is. But, I mean, do you think it's gonna be?
So just so we're all deliberating here, so do have the last item on the agenda, other than new business, is an executive session. To look at basically an interim chief, and this is based on the assumption that we will not have filled the full-time chief position by June 22nd. I don't know that we need to have that conversation tonight. Does seem to be based on the timeline. We are gonna have to have somebody in that interim role. I just don't see how we're interviewing in May. I don't know how we're gonna have somebody on full-time that point in June. Seems unlikely, so. But that's whether or not we wanna have that conversation tonight, I think is up to the group, obviously.
I would agree, we're not gonna have somebody chosen and selected. Especially with all the town meetings going on in between, which will complicate things a bit.
Executive session here is called for town administrators. I don't see.
Yeah.
Whately or Sunderland.
No, and I was covering our bases, but I wasn't certain if
Okay.
actually people were gonna be here, but.
Yeah. I'm not sure we're ready to do it tonight, right?
Okay,
All right, what do you think, Tom? I agree. I think that we have to look at, now, we have to look at what's available. If, you know, do we look at people that may have retired that would be, come back on a part-time basis? Do we want to have someone from the, that's in the present, you know, in the present organization that has, you know, some of the skill sets that we're looking for also, or that can be trained. But yeah, those are good questions. And I think right now, like one of the things that you didn't want to put out there is, you know, people in the business. Looking at you, Gary, looking at you, Matt, Matt and Blake, and there are people that you know that may want to fill in for a period of time also. And, or do you stay in the department? And I do have one question for Blake. Blake, part of the job description here says that they need a valid Class D driver's license. Do we need to specify that it's a Massachusetts license? Or is there any words that we should put in there?
Yes, it has to be a Massachusetts driver's license.
Thank you. Can you add that?
I'll make a note to add that.
Thank you, Blake.
Yeah. I think that's gonna come with your residency anyways.
You would hope. You would hope. Okay.
So it sounds like folks want to table the executive session for now at least, and then maybe there's some new business to touch on.
yep, any other discussion on that before we move on?
Okay with that? What do you think? Well, I think that's a good idea. I would like to suggest that we figure out what we actually gonna do in the executive session.
Before we have it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, we can decide during executive session whether you're gonna look for an inside interim candidate or an outside interim candidate. All those things should be done in executive session as opposed to decided right now.
Yeah, right. You want to have, so you think 2 weeks is enough for us to have the discussions and see what's out there?
Yeah, I don't know,
Gary,
Yeah, should be enough time.
what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, you do that.
Right? Yeah. All right, we'll do it again. Crystal, still there?
I'm still here.
How's your busy schedule?
I,
Oh, that would be the week before your town meeting. You're gonna probably be busy that week, huh?
well,
When's
Just-
your town?
throw it in there because we don't typically meet on a Tuesday. You know, we'll be busy. If we have to meet, it'll be Monday, Wednesday. So
Oh, would the 21st be okay for you?
I believe it should be, unless, you know, something like this happens where I actually have to do my day job.
You just wanted to go to Dinosaur Barbecue for dinner.
Yeah. Me
Come
suck
on.
yogurt because I didn't get to go to dinner. I came to this instead.
Yeah, we don't see your picture on the iPhone, so don't, you could be sitting right at the, table right now and getting
She's not a nice barbecue, trust
a
me.
nice,
We hear it.
Pronto burger, Pronto ribs right there, so you wouldn't know.
Yeah, not quite.
Fred, how to play for some for you here.
Looks good for me.
Chris, can you make that happen, please?
Yeah.
Or you come back to wait these days again?
Always welcome, yeah.
Okay.
Any thought that that's the sole purpose of the meeting is the executive session? That we don't group anything else onto the agenda? We shouldn't have anything to do between now and 2 weeks from now. I would think.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, and obviously Sunderland can send us their suggestion for the
Yeah, crystal good.
preliminary screening committee member, but
We could just call the meeting to order and go right into executive session then and.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be the special executive session board.
I don't have that by repertoire here, so.
You know, we have a little, Chris probably had a little laminated cheat sheet. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else? Chief?
New business, yes, one of our full-time employees gave their notice to change status today, for the week, it would be the first week of next month. So they gave about a month's notice, requesting to change status from full-time to part-time. It's Morgan Barrett, who will be, attending nursing school full-time.
Oh, congratulations.
So congratulations to Morgan. She will be missed as a full-time employee. I would like to move forward with the process of filling that position. Sooner than later. The way that we have gone about filling vacancies of this nature in the past, I would like to follow that same process. I thought there may be some discussion about it, just because budget season is coming up. There's all this discussion, chief's position and all of that, but to me, it makes a lot of sense to put together our typical hiring committee, keep it internal and make our recommendation to the Deerfield Select Board for appointment, just as we have always done. So,
I see no reason why the chief's position had anything to do with the hiring.
right.
Yeah, I agree. Because at the end of the day, if we don't fill a position, then we're looking at overtime, we're looking at taxing staff. Summertime, vacation, we know we've got treehouse schedule. We need to cover as well.
We have 2 people going out on maternity leave, this summer. I'd like to get this filled.
Absolutely.
All right, very good. Any other new business?
I know there was some discussion with multiple towns in the town of Conway about how that was gonna play out, potentially Conway joining our group. Has there been anything that can be shared on where we're at for where we stand with Conway?
Yeah, so I had a nice conversation, with the Conway ambulance folks, and I think they're very open to the idea of joining our group. Their concern, of course, is that they want any change to be an improvement on their existing scenario. From their perspective, their scenario right now is that they have a staff, or not a staff, they have an ambulance in town capable of transport. And they don't want to lose that capability, right? So realistically, 80% of their calls, their ambulance transport is coming from us, or it's coming from Corey and us. And they affect very few of their own transports, but from their perspective, they have an ambulance in town and they don't want to lose that capability. So I think moving forward, they're very open to the idea as long as it's a service improvement. I think they understand that maybe a little more money per year, but that would be more than offset by capital costs over the life of an ambulance or your equipment or the like. I think having a paramedic service level as a guarantee would be a big step up for them. They do an amazing job. They're wonderful folks. But I think it could be mutually beneficial. So I think they're open to that, and I think they're open to further discussion, but a proposal will have to be put before them. We're certainly looking at, FY 28, 29 to make any real movement with this. That would, of course, necessitate reopening the IMA. Once again, the IMA, just from the previous discussion, is supposed to be renewed every 3 years. That's the language. So we could, whoever takes this project on, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think for both Conway and for Scouts, and I think it's worth pursuing. So that's where it sits.
And I might just add to that, so back in February, we got word from FERCog that they were putting out their district local technical assistance requests. Deerfield ended up moving forward with some kind of request to them to basically help us look at what it would mean to bring Conway into SCEMS. I did let Becky, I'm not sure what Whately Sunderland ended up doing for their DLTA requests. But I would expect FERCog to get back to us in the next couple of months on whether or not they can provide technical assistance to them. And they've of course got an emergency management division, and they, so they can provide that help, which would be great, particularly given that we're not going to have this guy to kick around anymore. So yeah.
No, I certainly appreciate all the work that's gone into it, because I think it's a worthwhile venture, and I think when we laid this out, it was laid out with the thought of having that IMA opened up to have other folks come in. It's just a matter of working through the details of what that might look like as they do come in. But I think it's definitely worth it with the amount of coverage we provided the town of Conway. So thank you. Back to the IMA. I know you, Chief, you made a comment a while back, I think it was you, talking about the fact that we had brought the service to where it is, and we needed to now start looking at what is the next 10 years or 15 years begin to look like. And I think part of that IMA is that vision of what does the next step of this thing look like, because we've done a nice job shepherding it to where it's gotten. I think when it was originally built, we built it to get where we're at today. We couldn't see much beyond that. We were hoping it was going to get to here. And now that we've gotten here, okay, where do we go? And, I think we've had our financial growing pains a little bit. I appreciate you pushing for the, continued mutual aid to the surrounding communities. I think it's just a matter of figuring out all the financial details around it to make sure it's fair and equitable. And then probably something with the FERCog to begin looking at communities that don't provide their own EMS service today. What does that look like in the future for those communities as well? Because it's not getting any better, it's not getting any easier, and I think we've shown within our communities that the service that we've stood up and provided has been beneficial to our residents. And I appreciate all the effort that's gone into your tenure here, into listening to us, hearing us, and working through some of these issues to get us to where we're at. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely, thank you. I wanna say, you know, I think we've reached probably the best possible outcome in Hatfield. Short of them becoming a 24-hour service again. And it's certainly gonna help us to pay for future equipment and staffing and so forth, so very pleased with that.
So, Chris, if the FERCog does, and I don't think we should just concentrate on one town also.
Yeah, I think in the application, we just said. We're aware of Conway and the possibility there, we're aware of some issues with Hatfield, and so we kind of left it open to, you know, we're thinking about expanding. And we'd like some technical assistance with how that happens, including looking at.
That's good, because I think there's, you know, you see Northfield now, Northfield ambulance is expanding their, you know, Northfield, Berniston, Irving, and Gill, I think. So they're, and they don't, so I agree. And there's other towns, then you look at some of the places, and again, going up to Greenfield, and you see, Highland comes in quite often, right? And you got full rain that's all over up in the hill towns. So, and I don't know how long those services can last, so you really need to start looking.
Countywide.
And again, it's nice that you have an ambulance, but it has to be staffed. And chief will tell you, if you're looking at paramedic level service, you just don't ALS, you just don't say, I'm gonna put an ALS on the road. Doesn't happen.
And that's the Conway problem, they have the entrance field, not so staffed.
Well, I think what got us here originally was that we learned that there was, to have volunteers, the state was making it very difficult for volunteers to continue to serve local ambulances. Not impossible, but you really have to be very, very, very dedicated. And they're from the
Requirements were becoming more stringent, calls were becoming longer, there was more documentation, there was more to do. And it wasn't just to go scoop your neighbor up and drop them off at the hospital and come back home.
right. So I think it's gonna be a continual problem. Because people don't want to, and deserve to have adequate emergency care. And that's why we first started. And it sounds like Jerry Stone has moved to Conway now.
I think part of that can be addressed by refocusing the view of what we do as not so much a public safety arm, but rather a healthcare organization, which is what we in fact are. It happens to be on the highway. Sometimes we wear ANSI colored vests. There is an rule where we integrate with a unified chain of command and work under NIMS criteria. However, what we are is healthcare. And if you're going to pursue a public safety model for a healthcare agency, you're of course going to run into stumbling blocks. So I think, you know, what I'm hearing is people want high quality healthcare. And part of that involves pre-hospital care. And, you know, there's a pathway forward for this, and it can certainly be achieved. I will say, if you want things to progress, and you want to see improvements, and, you know, we need to make sure that we're not trying to not change anything and continue looking forward. So I have no doubts that will happen. I don't have anything else this night.
You mentioned NIMS. We don't have anything in our job description about NIMS qualification.
Sure.
Is that something that paramedics will take in their studies to get when they get that, or is that on their own?
It varies.
And should that be at least 1, 2, 4, and 7, 500? Should that be a requirement in the?
At minimum, I'll send you a list.
Okay, so we wanna make, you know what I mean, we probably wanna add that, Blake, would you agree with that? I mean, now it seems like everybody has to have that training, if, you know, the NIMS 100, 200, 400, 700.
You can pick that up afterwards. You can make it a requirement, but they don't necessarily have to have it to get the job, and you could put it down that they get it afterwards.
Within a year after.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, but we should put something like that in the requirement.
I would be careful because some of those requirements, you know, some of them, they're not all the online classes. So some of them you have to make a real effort to attend multiple sessions,
The 300.
you know,
The 300 is a 3-day person.
based off of other people's schedules. And, you know, oftentimes these things are filled up a year in advance. So you don't want to kind of set somebody up to fail. So they are important points, however, you know, just be aware of that. Okay, it's not always easy.
So maybe we add a certification preferred type of thing for the.
Yeah, I think at some point you want there to be the NIMS, especially working in the field, that field. Because they are, you know, you're dealing with the chain of command and incident management, so they should be definitely in there. But Chief, if you could send Chris and us a list of what you'd recommend. I'm pretty sure you do 1, 2, 4, and 7. The 300 is, I know, was a 3-day class. In person, you can't do that one. Okay. I'm good.
Need to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. 709. Crystal voting? I saw her hand go up.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like a little barbecue sauce on that, yeah, looks like he was having ribs.